we're going to talk about focus, but probably not in the way you're used to. We are not talking about more discipline, more willpower, or just trying harder. Nope. Today, we're talking about architecture. We are going to deconstruct the invisible forces that are hijacking your attention, and I'm going to give you a blueprint to rewire your brain for instant, almost effortless focus. And we're going to do it by mastering the one thing you've probably been told doesn't really matter, your environment. I want you to really let this sink in, because this idea is at the absolute core of everything we're about to cover. See, we've all been sold this lie of pure concentration, this idea that focus is some kind of mental superpower we can just switch on. But the truth, the real secret from neuroscience, is that focus is actually a conditioned response. It's an automated reaction to the cues around you. It's not a muscle you flex, it's a state you learn to trigger. So here's the game plan. First, we're going to expose what I call the focus hallucination. That's the lie that's keeping you stuck. Then we'll look under the hood at the biological reason it happens, the associative veto. After that, we get to the good stuff, the solution. I'm talking about the anchoring engine and the neurobiology that makes it tick. And finally, we're going to get super practical with your own anchor audit so you can start engineering your impact like today. Let's do this. Okay, part 1, the focus hallucination. This is where we break down the real problem. You know that feeling when you're trying to do deep work and it feels like you're staring into a thick fog? That is not a personal failing. It is a system failure. You've been told the problem is your character, when the real problem is the script your brain is running. And that feeling, it actually has a name: the hallucination of effort. It's that heavy, grinding, uphill battle you feel the second you sit down to work. But here's the thing, it's not real resistance to the work itself. It's the friction your brain is creating because the very room you're in is tied to a dozen different stories. That desk, this screen, they're anchored to your work, sure, but they're also anchored to Instagram, your bills, that show you binged, and your last 3 anxieties. Your nervous system is literally in a state of conflict. And this is so important. We treat our environment like it's just a passive background. It's not. It is an active participant in your mental state. So when you sit there trying to force it, trying to be disciplined, you're not building character, you're just wrestling the room. And that, my friend, is a fight you are always going to lose, because you're trying to win a race while your brain is hallucinating that it's in 5 other places at once. So why does this happen? Let's get into the biology of it. Section 2, the associative veto. This is the invisible wall that's actively hijacking your attention. It's the reason you feel like you're just treading water. And it's what keeps you in this loop of just drifting, never really getting traction. Well, it happens because of what we can call an associative glitch. See, your brain is, at its core, a prediction machine. Its number one job is to save energy by creating shortcuts. So when it sees physical cues, your phone on the desk, the TV remote in your line of sight, it treats them like buttons for those shortcuts. It predicts what usually happens here. And if what usually happens is distraction, well, it's going to fire up the neural pathways for distraction, not for deep work. That's why you can sit down with every intention to be productive and then feel this overwhelming urge to do literally anything else. Now, what's really fascinating is we can actually name the culprit. The part of your brain running this whole operation is called the Anterior Cingulate Cortex, or the ACC. Think of it like a conflict monitor, and based on all your past data, your ACC has basically decided, hey, this space is safe for distraction. It's learned this environment is for low-value, quick-hit dopamine activities. So when you try to force a high-value, deep work script onto it, the ACC screams conflict and just slams the veto button on your attempt to focus. This isn't laziness, it's a systemic neural hijack. And this leads to 2 totally different realities. Over on the left, you've got the drifter's loop. This is where most people live, honestly. You try to work in a polluted space, your ACC vetoes you, so you struggle, and that struggle then gets anchored to the space itself, which makes it even harder to focus the next day. It's a vicious cycle. You're burning precious mental fuel just trying to convince your own brain you're not in a playground. But look to the right. There is another way. Architectural sovereignty. You engineer your environment on purpose. You anchor the space to the feeling of impact and flow. And that makes it almost effortless to drop into a focus state tomorrow. One is a downward spiral of decay, the other is an upward spiral of momentum. Which brings us to the solution. Section 3, the anchoring engine. Now, this isn't just a list of tips or hacks. This is a robust 3-part protocol. It's designed to manually scrub the interference from your brain and turn your cluttered attentional radar into a precision laser. We're going to stop trying to concentrate, and we're going to start to engineer. So here are the 3 layers of the engine. Step 1 is spatial sanitation. It's all about moving from a cluttered, multi-purpose space to a clean, single-intent forge. You hunt down and you get rid of every single object that's anchored to leisure or distraction. Step 2 is stimulus coupling. This is where you give your brain a unique, unmistakable anchor, a specific lamp, a particular soundscape, some object that exists only for deep work. This makes the work state feel more real and more urgent to your brain than all the other noise. And finally, step 3, state entry weighting. You create a little ritual, a momentum bracket, where the very act of turning on your anchor becomes its own reward, signaling to your brain, okay, it's time to perform. I mean, what we're really talking about here is, for all intents and purposes, a RAM upgrade for your focus. You're not just trying to run the same old software a little bit better. You are fundamentally upgrading the hardware. You're redesigning the environment so that focus isn't something you just hope for, it's something you guarantee. You're moving from a state of being fragile to one of being in complete control. So let's get into the science of why this works so ridiculously well. Section 4, the neurobiology of the anchor. This isn't just a nice idea, it is grounded in how your brain is actually wired for high performance. So here it is, the critical piece. The anchoring engine works because of a really powerful neurological principle called context-dependent retrieval. All that means is that memories, skills, and states of mind are way, way easier to access when you are in the same physical context where you first created them. By building a unique, purified context for your deep work, you are manually lowering the energy price tag for your brain to get into that high-performance state. You're making it cheap. And look, this shows you the effect in real time. In a typical cluttered, multi-purpose room, your brain's resistance signal, that struggle from the ACC, is at 100%. It's fighting you. But the data shows that when you move into an anchor-primed space, that resistance signal can drop by up to 40%, almost instantly. You are literally making it easier for your brain to do its best work. And the result of lowering that resistance is this amazing state we call neural coherence. This is where your focus is no longer getting tapped on the shoulder every 2 seconds by internal arguments or distractions. Instead of burning all your energy just filtering out the noise, you get to invest all of it into executing the mission. It is the difference between trying to hear a violin in a loud, chaotic orchestra and hearing it in a soundproof studio. And this is the identity shift that happens. When you master your context, you are no longer a slave to the room, just reacting to whatever random cue pops into your vision. No, you become the chief executive of your mind. You are deliberately and strategically creating the conditions for your own peak performance. You're in charge. All right, theory is great, but impact comes from actually doing the thing. So that brings us to Section 5, performing your anchor audit. This is your immediate step-by-step guide to applying this whole system starting right now. We're shifting from the why to the how. Here's how you do it. 3 simple steps. Step 1, identify your trigger. Find one unique stimulus that you can own completely. Could be a specific desk lamp that you only turn on for deep work, a certain ambient soundscape you play. Heck, it could even be a specific hat you put on. Step 2, protect the purity. This is non-negotiable. The anchor is only present when you are producing. The second you stop to scroll social media or check your email, the anchor gets turned off or taken away. You have to protect the purity of that signal. And step 3, sanitize the space. Use what I call the sanitation sieve. Look at your desk and be ruthless. Get rid of any object that is anchored to your leisure life. The goal is to make the trigger sharp and clear. So, I want you to ask yourself this question right now. What is the one unique stimulus you can own completely? What is an object, a light, a sound that you can dedicate with absolute 100% purity to your most important work? Think about it, because finding this is your first real step toward building your own engine. And that brings us to our final section, engineer your impact. This is where we crystallize this whole philosophy, the fundamental shift away from willpower and toward architecture. It's about understanding that high performance isn't about how much you can handle. It's about how well you can trigger the state where only impact is possible. Look, if you only take one single thing away from our time together, please let it be this. Your struggle with focus is not a character flaw. It is not some moral failing on your part. It is a hardware problem. It's a mismatch between your goals and your environment. And the beautiful thing about hardware problems is that they can be fixed. They can be engineered. They can be solved. So let's just recap the big takeaways. Remember, your brain is literally hallucinating distractions based on the physical cues around you. Relying on willpower alone is a high-friction strategy that's pretty much doomed to fail over the long run.
You simply cannot outperform a cluttered attentional radar. The solution? Build a single intent forge, a space dedicated only to deep work. Because when you master the trigger, your focus becomes an unstoppable, high-resolution force.
So this is the final mantra. This is the new operating principle. Stop trying to force the feeling of focus. Instead, build the architecture that makes focus inevitable. Sanitize the room, find your unique anchor, and activate the state. Because when you anchor the state, you get to claim the impact.